Welcome to Amiga on the Lake. This is February 19th, 2018. This is a video where I'm going to show you how to use our new USB stick to reinstall your OS. So, here's the little USB stick here. We added this quite recently. The first thing, systems sold by Amiga on the Lake after July of 2017 have all the necessary options set in the U-boot so that you can boot from a USB stick. So systems sold before that don't have all the things set. We're coming out with version 2.0 of this, which is going to be a standalone so that folks can buy that and reinstall their systems rather nicely, and I will talk more about that in a few moments. But there's a USB stick. You're good to go. Now, we also sell this USB stick separately, and that's just for people that want a cool USB stick with has their logo on it. It's really quite nice, but there is nothing installed on this USB. That's just blank. So again, it's the one that comes with our system, and it reinstalls the operating system just the way that you got it from us. In other words, 1024 by 768 resolution. It defaults to that, where you can adjust the resolution for your system, and pretty much do everything you want from there. And again, it installs the OS, or reinstalls the OS, and it installs the Enhancer Plus software, because all of those things are installed on the system as well. So it's a pretty nice, pretty slick little system. Of course, it's much faster than the CD. You put the CD in, you install the operating system, then you put the CD in for your Enhancer Plus software version 1.3. Go through that whole thing, reboot again. It's much quicker with the USB than it is with the quote-unquote old-fashioned way with the CDs. So, okay. Now, here is this system. We have a workbench partition, we have programs, we have empty. Now, per Hyperion, they gave us instructions to make the workbench partition 1 GB, the programs partition 20 GB, and the empty partition was the rest of your hard drive, whether it's a 480 gig solid state drive or a 1 terabyte. The remainder goes here. So workbench 1 gig, programs 20 gig, and empty is the remainder of your hard drive. And of course, you can rename empty to anything you want. And for that matter, you can any of these as well. This is just a USB stick, and I'll unplug it right now, just to install a couple things to be prepared to make this video. So here we are, workbench, programs, and empty. Now this is a little different than you got it from us, because of course we've changed the resolution on this to fit the monitor that we're using, and we changed a couple things around. So first, with the USB stick, it's important to note that on the back of your X5000 there are 6 USB 2.0 ports. The 2 at the top have black on the inside of the port that you can see quite readily. The bottom 4 have white. So there's a little sliver of white in the bottom 4 USB 2.0 ports. We recommend that you use one of the bottom 2 USB 2.0 ports. So it's white, and that's what we recommend. We've done this, good Lord, probably over 100 times, just testing and just making sure that this is it all works, and we've tested everything, and it does work nice. But again, if you do have a problem where it doesn't seem to do what it's supposed to, and we'll get to some of that, shut your machine off, plug it into a different port, and try it again. But quite frankly, we have not had even one problem when it's plugged into one of the bottom 2 USB 2.0 ports that again are white. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna plug in the recovery USB right now. Okay, she's plugged in, and you notice that here's the USB with the system installed, and right here is a little application, a script that reinstalls it for you. You don't need to go to a command line shell. Just double click this and it does everything that you need. So now what we're going to do is we're going to reboot our system, and we're going to boot from the USB drive, because you can't alter an operating system unless you're booting from another operating system. In other words, to change this partition and make alterations to it, we need to boot from an operating system other than on this hard drive. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click the reset button. Okay, and the screen is black, and momentarily it should turn to white, and then the familiar U-boot should come up. And now we're going to wait until the red and white boing ball on the left starts spinning, shooting its little lightning through the X5000 logo on the right. And there we have it. Now we're either going to click the space bar or the return key, and we're going to be greeted by the AmigaOne Early Startup Control menu. Now, you notice that AmigaOS, Start AmigaOS is blue. That means that it's the default. We need to use the arrow keys, and we need to tab down to boot options. Not Linux, not MorphOS, but boot options. And for this, we need to click the enter or return key, whichever you choose to call it. Okay, and now here's the AmigaOne boot options. Now, we're not booting from the hard disk, we're booting from a USB stick, remember? And so that's not optical, it's not Ethernet, and again, it's not hard drive. So we need to go down to boot from mass storage device. And it doesn't say device at the end of it, just boot from mass storage. And again, we need to click the enter or return key. Okay, it's scanning bus up on the left-hand side here. You can see scanning bus 0 for devices. That's going to have either 5 or 4, depending on what's plugged in. 5. Scanning bus 1 should be 2. Found 1. One storage device, and it appears to be working just fine. Loading the Kickstart module. Okay, now we're going to have the AmigaOS4.1 Final Edition pre-release boot screen. Quite a mouthful. Now you're going to notice that this boot screen is going to lag. It's going to linger and hang around a little longer than it does on your hard drive, and especially with your solid state drive, because it is booting from a USB, and that's a little slower. Okay, and you notice that the AmiDock, it kind of displayed what it was loading for the AmiDock, again because the USB is a little slower. Okay, so we booted from the mass storage. So number one, again, you want to plug it into one of the bottom 2 white USB 2.0 ports in the back of your X5000. That's pretty much step 1. And step 2 is the boot process that we just went through, picking mass storage, and then picking, well, not mass storage, boot options, mass storage, and here you go. Now, step 3, you want to be certain that it actually did boot from the USB stick. And to do that, we'll click the shell down here. Now, and by the way, notice that the dock, the X-dock, the clock, the calendar are all here just like you got your system. And notice the screen resolution has changed from 1920 to 1080 back to 1024 by 768. So that's a little confirmation that yes, we booted from the USB stick. But again, go down here and click the shell and notice that, yep, USB, it doesn't say Workbench. And if you type a sign, ASSIGN, and click return, pull this down so you can read a little better, notice it is loading everything from the USB stick, including system from the USB. So there's confirmation. We absolutely booted from our USB stick, which is exactly what we want. Now, again, here we have the Workbench, Programs, and Empty. So if we open the Workbench, we notice that it says 8% full and almost 5 gigs, and not 1. Now, the reason is because I've been playing with this a bunch and doing some tests on it. So this is not set to standard. Now, the thing that I was experimenting with that I want to show you is, let's say that you decide, like a lot of people have, that 1 gigabyte for your Workbench or your system directory is it's just a little too small. So the last little test I done, I changed it to 5, and everything works great. 5, 10, whatever. So we can close that. Programs folder, I have Odyssey in there. Empty. We have nothing in empty. Well, we can just reformat the Workbench and just go ahead and reinstall it without a problem. So I want to make that clear. And let me just format this now. Format. Now, the next thing that you're going to want to take notice is the device name, the partition level device name is DH0. We're going to want to keep the Workbench partition DH0. The reason being is the USB stick is set up that it copies and clones everything on the USB stick to DH0. It doesn't matter what you call the volume name, the device name needs to be DH0. You could call it boot and not Workbench, but the device name needs to be DH0. Now, I don't particularly like trash cans, so I'm going to, remove the trash can. You can follow your preferences on that, of course. Quick format. Lost. Yep, okay. Yes, I really want to reformat it. Okay. Now we have the Workbench, and holy cow, there's nothing in there, and it's just a touch over 5 gigs. We're going to leave the rest of these two alone. Now, we could double-click the installer and go ahead and reinstall it, and it's going to clone this, and you're going to be right like the screen you're looking at, of course, minus the USB stick and the icon that it has sticking out here. It's going to be looking just like this: 1076 by, 1024 by 768. It's going to be set up just the way that you got it. Again, it's the operating system with the Enhancer software pack 1.3 installed. We could do that right now and be good to go. But I do want to go a little farther in this tutorial for those of you who just want to see this. We're going to change this around a little bit, kind of like to making it more personalized, something that you might want to do. So I'm going to click on the USB, and I'm going to go to the system directory or system drawer in there, and I'm going to go to Media Toolbox. Now, it's important to pick P5020 SATA device. USB device, device, we don't need to worry about that because we're booting off the USB, and the USB is to reinstall our operating system much quicker and nicer than when doing it with CD. So we don't need to worry about USB device. We only need to worry about SATA because that's going to be any of the hard drives that we have in our system. So not USB, the P5020 SATA device. And you're going to click Start. And here we go. Fixed hard drive. So let's go ahead and take a look at our partitions and file systems. And okay, DH0, and remember, DH0, this copies to DH0. It doesn't matter if you call the volume name, boot or any kind of crazy name you want, but the device has got to be DH0. DH1 and DH2. Now remember I said 1 gig, 20 gigs, and the rest of your hard drive was Hyperion's instructions, which you can do whatever you want with. So let's just go ahead and remove these partitions. All removed. So let's add a partition now. Now let's say, first of all, notice that when adding, I went from DH0 to DH1 to DH2, so DH3 just kind of naturally comes up. So this is the first partition we're adding. We do want this to be our Workbench partition. So I'm clicking in the text box under name, and I'm just going to hit the backspace arrow, and I'm erasing the 3, replacing that with a 0. So now it's DH0, and anytime you are in a text box on Amiga, you always want to hit return key, and when I do hit the return key, you'll notice that the cursor goes away. So here it goes, return. Okay, and notice that it changed here when I click return. DH0. So we're good to go. Now let's, well, I guess we could do the whole drive, but that's not what we want to do. So let's aim for something around 10. Okay, whoops, I almost had 10 in there. There we go. Let's 12. Let's make it a little smaller. It doesn't really matter, but just to mess with this for a minute, we're going to go onto the high cylinder on the last digit on the left. I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to hit the delete key. I'm going to delete 5. I'm going to replace that with 4, and then again, I'm going to hit the return key, and boom, it's 10.44. Okay, that makes me happy. We could go a little, we could go a little nuts with it and make it exactly 10. It really doesn't matter. 10 gigs is twice as big as 5, and it's 10 times bigger than 1. So this should satisfy my requirements. I want my Workbench a lot bigger than 1 gig. So now we set that to 10. And of course, this is where our system is going to reside, so it has to be bootable. We always want to make sure that whatever we put our operating system on, it needs to be bootable. So select bootable. Notice the boot priority doesn't even show up. Ah, there we are. Okay. Now we're going to select the file system, and according to Hyperion's directions, which I'm going to continue to follow here, is the new gen file system ngf/00. Okay, to accept changes. Okay, I think we're good with that partition. We're going to click in here again, add partition, and let's well, first let's change this. It's trying to put DH3 again in there, so let's put our cursor in there, and let's backspace over 2 and change that to 1. DH0, DH1, I'm going to hit return, and you're going to notice that this is going to change immediately when I hit return. Bingo, there we are. Okay, now let's get this down to, I don't know, let's say 100. Oh, wow, very good luck. Okay, that's 100. Now we don't need to, we're not booting from that. We don't need to worry about that. We already have it set for DH0. Select file system, and again, we're going to pick the new gen file system. Click OK, and we're going to click back in our empty area here and add a partition. And yeah, well, why not? We're going to name the remainder of this. We're going to let it be the empty partition. And again, DH0, DH1, and a DH2. This is, you know, again, these things can be named anything, but this is typical Amiga paradigm. And so we're going to name it a little bit logical, a little bit easy to follow. DH0, DH1. And as you guessed it, this is going to be DH2. Backspace 2, return, and again, we want to install the file system. New gen file system, okay? There we go. So, DH2, DH1, and notice that our boot priority is going to come up here for DH0. Yes, and we don't want to forget that, because if it's not bootable, it's not going to work. So DH0, again, remember that, and make sure that that's bootable. Accept changes. Save to disk. Yes, we want to save those to the disk. And when we click this, we're going to be prompted to reboot. Do you want to reboot now? Yes. Now, it might not actually reboot. This is a pre-release version of the OS. Sometimes it reboots, sometimes it doesn't when you come up with one of those prompts like we just had. So I'm going to click, and it's not rebooting for me. So I'm going to click the power button to shut the computer off. Click the power button again, and we're back in business. So in a moment, the screen should go white, and then we should be presented with the U-boot screen yet again. Okay, and we'll wait for this little guy, the little Boing ball on the left, to start spinning. Now again, you leave the USB stick in the whole time because we just did all that from the Workbench, our operating system on the USB stick. So, okay, so make sure you leave that in. We're going to hit return. We are going to, yet again, we're going to go down to boot options, click return again, and remember that it's mass storage, boot from mass storage, and we're going to click return again. And we're scanning 0. Nothing's changed, so yeah, it's going to be 5. The next is going to be 2. And found the storage device, our USB stick. Loading the Kickstart module. And then we're going to be presented with the pre-release boot screen yet again. So we're almost up with our system here. Again, it hangs a little bit longer because it is booting off a slower I/O device, the USB stick. Okay. Now, ooh, nothing showed up. Well, in a moment we're gonna see that change. Ah, there we are. Okay. Now they're uninitialized. We created our partitions, but they're not formatted. So DH0 again. That's the magic thing. DH0. So I'm going to call this Workbench. Again, you can call it what you want. You know, you can call it boot, for example. We're not going to do that. We're going to format this. Right click, and DH0 again. I keep saying that just because I just want to make sure that you guys don't miss that. Put trash can. I don't like trash cans. You can do what you want there. So we're going to call this Workbench. WORKBENCH. And again, we're going to click return. Okay. Quick format. Okay to format device. DH0. Yes. All data we lost. Well, there isn't anything on there to start with. Format. Yes, I'm absolutely sure. Okay. Okay, we're good to go there. Now the next drive. Now just to be a little bit different, I'm going to call this work, because that seems to be more the Amiga methodology. You've got your workbench and a work partition. So let's follow that. And I'm not going to again put a trash can there, but we're going to call this this partition work. And we're going to hit return. Okay, and quick format, and yep, final warning, good to go. Okay, now just to be a little different again, well, maybe I'll still call this empty. I don't know. Yeah, it defaulted to empty. So yeah, let's call it the empty. Quick. Yep. And again, final warning. Yep, we're sure that we want to format that. And of course, this takes a little longer because it's a much bigger drive. And this is, by the way, a hard disk drive. It's not a solid state, so it's a little slower. Okay, here we go. Workbench, and again, we've got 10, a little bigger than 10. Work is 100 gigs, and empty is the remaining 820 on this 1 terabyte hard disk drive. So hey, we're set to go. We created our partitions. We've labeled the important partition. The really only important partition in this thing is DH1. We've kept empty, and we named this work. They're all good. We created the partitions. We rebooted. They're formatted, so we're ready to go. So now here's where the magic comes in. Double click the X5000 AmigaOS reinstall. Okay, reinstall AmigaOS 4.1 pre-release to Workbench. And again, we put the reminder there. Sorry to keep bringing that up. You are about to copy all files from USB, and here is what we actually called the name of this. We call it US0. We could have called it USB0, but I just went with 2 letters. US0 to Workbench DH0. Make sure your Workbench is reformatted before proceeding. You don't want to just run this on top of a Workbench that you already have on there, because it's going to copy over files, it's going to leave stuff, and that can create create its own problem. So you do want to reformat this. Even if you leave the other 2 alone, you do want to reformat that so you're coming clean and empty. So anything other than an N here, or a no, like we can put any crazy letter, and again anything other than not an N, I'm sorry, anything other than a Y or yes is giving it permission to go ahead and do that. So let's just put I don't know, let's just put an N and hit return. And of course it cancels, and then in a few seconds, once the cancel thing is up there for a moment or two to let you know that it was canceled, it closes. So let's run this again. But this time we're going to go right ahead, and we are going to press Y, and we're going to hit return. Ah, magic! So it is immediately copying / cloning the USB to the Workbench partition. Now, as I was saying earlier, the earlier systems before July don't have all the options set in the U-boot to actually boot from a USB stick. So version 2 of our USB installer is going to correct that problem, so that those people that have an older U-boot can then use a USB to reinstall their system. But there's really more than that. The main thing is that version 2 will actually make a copy of your current operating system. So let's say you've got all this standard stock from us. You alter it, you make additions, you make changes, you put different libraries in there, and you've done a lot of work, and you've customized your operating system, and you really like it the way that it is. Well, what this is going to do is this actually going to make a copy of your operating system just the way that it is right now. Then, in the future, if 2 or 3 weeks go by or a month goes by and something gets corrupted and you're like, uh-oh, you can reinstall your operating system, not back to us, not back to the basic standard setup, but right back to when you created it yourself on your own. So in version 2.0, we're going to solve a lot of problems, and we're actually going to sell that USB on its own. So people that didn't have the option to buy a USB because we only released this recently can get a copy of that, and they're going to be really pleased. You can copy your whole system, and you're ready to go that way. So that was most of the talk that I had laid out in my head to cover up this little time. But it's not very long. It's only 4 or 5 minutes. I think it's 4.5 minutes if I remember correctly. So pretty shortly here, we should be greeted at the end. And it really is pretty quick, even though it's a USB. It really is. Well, of course, AmigaOS is a very small operating system, very lightweight and very fast. So that aids in this whole process as well. And again, you're reinstalling your operating system, but you're also it reinstalls everything with the Enhancer software pack too. Okay, we're coming to an end here. Okay, it is done. System restore is complete. Have fun. Shut down your computer, remove the USB, and reboot. And this is going to go away in a second. I just left that hang there for a little bit in case somebody's going to get a cup of coffee. Maybe they don't see that. So if you come back and it's right back to here, but it was copying, then you're all set. So I'm going to click the reset button and remove the USB. Okay. All right, and here we are yet again back at the old familiar U-boot. So we'll wait for the ball to start spinning, and this time we're just gonna click return yet again right there at Start AmigaOS. Well, it certainly seems to be successful. It's loading the Kickstart. All right, and there is the pre-release boot screen. And yep, very quickly. Okay. Now it does put the it does put the workbench up where the USB stick was, but we can change that very easily. Just move those down, and I just like to highlight all three at the same time. Right click and snapshot. Now they're going to stay there. Now again, this is 1024 by 768. You notice the resolution is large. From when we initially started, it was 1920 by 1080, and the clock wasn't here, the dock wasn't here, the calendar wasn't here. This is how you got your system. So that is about it for this video. It wraps up. Sorry if I went on a little longer, but I really didn't want to like speed up the video until the end of it copying. I really wanted people to see the whole experience and to to repartition your drive and all that. So I hope that this helps you, and we're working on adding this to our getting started guide. So thank you. Have a great time with your Amiga. We'll catch you soon, and keep your eyes open for 2.0.